Greetings, my film lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is L3's News Podcast. My name is Craig transmitting from the beautiful Swampy Making of South Florida, and today's date is Wednesday, January 30th, 2019. So let us begin. Go, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Right now it's early Wednesday morning, and I'm at Squiggy's, located at 207 Southwest 2nd Street, or Hemishi Drive, in the heart of the Hemishi district of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I was reading some of the articles. 5,000 troops, U.S. troops from the Army near the Colombian-Venezuelan border. I think we should just throw John Bolton's ass in the front line. Let's see how tough he really is. And to be very frank, let them decide what they want, and I'll just leave it at that. I am going to be talking about that. But first, homegrown to be exact, and talking about suspended Broward Sheriff Scott Israel has filed on requested a hearing to the Florida Senate to challenge a suspension by Governor Ron DeSantis under Executive Order 19-14 that happened on January 11th, I think, yeah. So we're definitely talking about that. That'll be the main topic. And so let's start from here. Came from the Miami Herald, and by Martin Vasallo. Says the sheriff suspended after Parkland shooting request hearing to get job back. As it reads here, since the ouster more than 2 weeks ago, when he called a political power grab, suspended Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel has been adamant that he would challenge Governor Ron DeSantis' decision to remove him from office. He and his legal team took their first official step on Tuesday, notifying the Florida Senate of Israel's formal request for an evidentiary hearing before an appointed special master to challenge the January 11th suspension. Apart from his appeal before the Republican majority Senate, which will ultimately vote on the merits of the suspension, Israel is considering the legal challenge, raising money through a recently formed legal defense fund. This invocation to a hearing is not intended to waive or limit Sheriff Israel's available legal remedies to challenge the unlawful exercise of the governor's suspension powers, the request states. Israel, 62 years old, a two-term Democratic sheriff, plus a member of Homeland Security, doesn't let you folks know, has been the subject of an intense criticism for his department's response to the February 14th Parkland shooting, and in which 17 students and a faculty member were killed, another 17 injured. After boasting of his amazing leadership during an interview on CNN, less than 2 weeks after the massacre, news reports later revealed that some deputies who responded to the shooting not merely entered the school, and others took cover behind their vehicles. 3 deputies who failed to confront the shooter were placed on restricted duties, and 2 others, including the school resource officer, have since retired. A state-appointed investigative committee found that a policy modification made by Israel, which changed the BSO instruction for confronting active shooters from mandatory to optional, could have contributed to the department's response. He later changed the policy back, stipulating that deputies shall confront the shooter. Flip-flop, flip-flop, flip-flop. As a candidate, the Republican DeSantis has said he would likely suspend Israel. 3 days into his governorship, he just did that, replacing Israel with former Cross Police Sergeant Gregory Tony, the department's first black sheriff. Coral Springs police were praised for their quick response to the Parkland shooting. They ran past BSO deputies on their way to the shooting. Israel has contended that while mistakes were made during BSO's response, he served the county honorably. Broward voters should choose their sheriff, which is an elected position. Sadly, this is not about what occurred on February 14, 2018. Well, you can add that one that happened around January 6th. Right, if I'm talking about January 6th, it happened at the Fort Lauderdale Airport too. Saudi boy. He said at a January 11th news conference at New Mount Olive Baptist Church in Fort Lauderdale, the governor promised as a candidate well before he had any facts about the investigation, well before the commission even began their work, that he would remove me from office. One of Israel's attorneys, Stuart Kaplan, said they are investigating whether DeSantis could legally remove Israel despite not being the governor during the Parkland shooting. What? That doesn't make any sense because he was governor when he signed an executive order 19-14. What the hell he's talking about here? We're investigating whether the legislature intended under Part 5, Section 112 for a statute was enacted to allow a newly elected government to utilize this as a means to remove an elected official when the governor was not in office at the time of the alleged misconduct. Kaplan wrote in a statement. You know what? What I'm going to do is let's look at that section, that Part 5, Section 112 of the Florida statutes. All right, and I've been, I was like looking through this before hitting the show, and I'm mainly focused on governors. And what's interesting about this, I'm looking at Florida Statute 112.50. Whether it says here, governor retain power to suspend public officers whenever the state, county, or municipal officer is made subject to suspension or removal by the terms of any statute or municipal charter. The power of the governor to suspend officers shall not be affected by such statutory or charter provisions, and the power to suspend shall reside concurrently in the governor and in the statutory or charter authority. That's like one of them there. And there's another one. Oh, shit. All right, stop. Okay. All right. It says here, 112.42. The governor may suspend any officer or any constitutional ground for such suspension that occurred during the existing term of the officer or during the next preceding 4 years. So this has happened during the term of office, whether it's 4-year preceding or the existing term. So that right there, according to Florida Statute 112.42, he made it official. He signed it, not before he was a candidate. It was filed on January 11th at 4:21 p.m. I did a show on that, so you can look it up yourself. Around January 12th, it happened. You can see it. You can it's called Welcome to Blowback, Sheriff Israel. So I did address that. But yeah, very interesting there because you have to look at all the facts. This is right on his face right now. And I'm going to add this link of chapter 5 or 112 for statute 112, and you could see this for yourself. There's some other areas in here as well. It's mainly pertaining to governors, to be exact. And those are the actual ones there. This procedure order suspension, content of order suspension, that's by selected committee and all that. So during the period of grounds may have occurred as 112.42. So that's like I've already done that. But let's give you a little rundown. So we're going to try to find a quote loophole, unquote. All right, and so one of those things they want to try to do an interesting challenge. That's how lawyers think. They're always trying to find a fault or damage control, I call it. And that's how it is. Position, order, suspension. Let's listen to this one here. I think I already did this one, right? Yeah, an order of suspension by the governor upon its execution shall be delivered to the Department of State. The Department shall forthwith deliver copies by registered mail or otherwise as may be advised to the officer suspended. the Secretary of the Senate and the Attorney General. The order of suspension shall be effective upon filing of the same within the Department of State. No further communication by the governor within the Senate shall be necessary to permit the Senate to act. That's self-explanatory. So we'll continue on. So we're going to try to find some alibi or excuse. Say, hey, he suspended him before he got sworn in. No. Based on the information, the executive order 19-14 on January 11th, he was governor. So something, people get a big kick out of. And right down here, Senate President Bill Galvano, Republican from Bradenton, confirmed receipt of Israel's request and stated that former Florida Representative Dooley Goodlatte would serve as a special master. Goodlatte is a former Republican lawmaker from Naples. Just one moment here. Alright, we'll continue on here. So, it says here the Senate will make all possible efforts to vote on the case by the end of 2019 session. Galvano stated in a memo to senators issued earlier this month. Goodlatte will also hear the case for suspended Alacalusa County Superintendent of Schools, Mary Beth Jackson. Sorry about that train going by. Yeah, hang tight here. So we're gonna make that one. Sorry about that, folks. It's one of those things that happens. All right, I guess we can proceed. So we're gonna hear a case as well from Oskaloosa County Superintendent of Schools, Mary Beth Jackson, was suspended. The Senate has received Sheriff Israel's request for hearings and will proceed accordingly. Galvano said in the statement, it remains intention to appoint former Representative Goodlatte as a special master. In Israel's letter to the Senate, his attorney take issue with Galvano's appointment of Goodlatte as a special master, while Sheriff Israel respects the state's intention of the Senate President to appoint a former legislator serve as a special magistrate. The letter reads, we believe the interests of justice and considerations of neutrality are best served through the appointment of a person with judicial and administrative experience, but without substantial involvement in partisan political matters. And that's interesting point there to making sure it's done all in good faith, which I will agree. Even though I'm not crazy about Scott Israel, but he has a right to be heard, regardless. If you deprive that, who's going to be next? And it's interesting because I was reading the Sun Sentinel. I'm not going to go a whole ranting on this, but it's very similar to the story from the Herald. But what really caught my eye was the whole thing. Like a couple people were supporting them. I'm just looking down right here, which I find amazing. I made it laughable. And come on, hold on, oops, I bypassed it. And if I'm correct, see, there's almost down the bottom of the page. Come on, It says here, Israel is a Democrat, the Senate is a Republican, and the Florida Senate is composed of 23 Republicans and 17 Democrats. It's unclear how politics will play out in the Israel case. Israel has received tepid support from some of Broward's leading Democrats. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Democrat from Weston, declined to say anything supportive of Israel when asked about him. And U.S. Representative Ted Deutsch, Democrat, whose district includes Parkland schools, said parents, families who lost loved ones in the Parkland shooting were right to ask for accountability. That's interesting. So they're like keeping everything hush hush. Democratic Broward Commissioner Mike Adine, who represents the Parkland area, said the State Commission report on the shooting made clear that change was needed. I see is all an accountability issue, he said. I'm not looking into politics of this. So that's interesting what he has to say, because he's looking at the information on his suspension. That's like one of the two shootings that occurred under his watch. So it was considered prima facie just cause. Once again. And of course, here in the bottom, the Florida Democratic Party has been critical of DeSantis' approach towards suspension, calling it a power grab to suspend officials who has not been charged criminally. Go read Article 4, Section 7 of the Florida Constitution again, you bunch of morons. DeSantis also suspended Palm Beach County elections head Susan Bulcher, citing her office's missing the state deadline to submit recounts results for the 2018 midterm elections. She resigned instead of fighting suspension. So, and interesting here, Beth Jackson's case. Mary Beth Jackson, who Okaloosa County elected superintendent. Then he's got elected superintendent. Mary Beth Jackson over child abuse incident in her district. And if I recall, I think Broward County, if I'm correct, Broward County is an appointed position, but up there is elected. I say, hey, I think in Broward, if that's true in Broward County, we should go back to the elected position. That's the way you gotta look at it, because I'm not impressed with the person's in there. Another federalized individual from Chicago who is very, very good friends with Barack Obama. Feds know best when it comes to the school system. Kids for cash. You know, in Broward County. Very interesting stuff there. So, yeah, that's why you have to really see this in the bigger picture. So you got a few of them who are keeping a little bit quiet. But Ted Deutsch was saying about Broward County family, the loved ones, the heirs of the Broward County shootings were right to ask for accountability. So he says something I could agree with him for once. Debbie Schultz, pretty quiet, has no comment, but Michael Adine was spot on. Hey, it's accountability issue. So, and I agree. That's how I see it too. Principle over party. So I'm going to leave that in here as well, so you folks can read it yourselves. And like I said, Sheriff Israel, you better back it up on your to get your job back. And I wish you the best. But one thing I could say, once again, you're a politicizing form of witch hunt on gun owners in the National Rifle Association, which I'm real critical of that organization at times too. Put you in that position. You stepped in your own bear trap. But wish you well, because you have the right to be heard. Alright, next one here came from Covert Geopolitics, and it's a reference to Venezuela. And it says, as far as it says here, Venezuela Supreme Court fights back deep state regime change. It came out today. It says the Maduro government is imperfect. The Venezuelans are just like the Americans and the rest of the global population. They can easily be manipulated through economic pressures and black propaganda. Fortunately for the Venezuelans, their Supreme Court is standing up to the developing deep state incursions into their domestic affairs. According to media reports, the Venezuelan Supreme Court has blocked all of the self-proclaimed interim president's bank accounts and financial transactions within its jurisdiction after the Venezuelan authorities have launched a preliminary investigation into the activities of the country's opposition leader, Juan Guaido. Reuters reported Tuesday signed a statement of the Venezuelan Supreme Court president. In particular, the court's ruling imposed a travel ban on Juan Guaido until the completion of the investigation. The country is further teetering into a full-blown economic recession as the Bank of England refused to release its gold deposits amounting to U.S. $1.2 billion. The deep state is hoping that by squeezing the Venezuelan government from accessing the much-needed funds that the military, they will have no other choice but to side with foreign interventionists. And there's a footage on here from RT talking about this. And I have, there was an article I read in globalresearch.ca as well, like a month ago. And I posted that. I posted it on my Facebook page, Twitter, and all that. So, yeah, definitely you can look that up in that website. I recommend it. The weaponization of the banking system by the Western robber barons is what triggered, in part, of the establishment of various development banks to finance the One Belt, One Road global economic initiative of China under its president Xi Jinping to help neighboring countries achieve their own economic development with relative independence from the financial oligarchs whose exercise of absolute power is without any sense of wisdom and accountability. Russia, for its part, is also unloading its U.S. dollar-denominated assets in response to a decade of economic sanctions against its citizens and companies. Misguided socialism is its own enemy. The Maduro government needs to invest more on critical infrastructure that will lead to self-reliance rather than promote a cultural dependency. It's time for Venezuelans to learn the lesson that they could not industrialize the economy in time and just rely solely on their oil exports. They will be perpetually dependent on the goodwill of other countries that are doing business with them. Such is the fate of societies led by personalities who have no real scientific and technical background. Typical lawyer politicians just strive to please the governed by giving those out, e.g. free housing and free health care, to maintain a position of authority and fatten themselves up the long way, instead of creating the right environment conducive for long-term economic development and mutual progress beyond their days in office. We will only achieve great economic progress if we put technicians in positions of decisions making as to what should the government's priority be, and the most practical approach of achieving such goals at any given time. We're living in a society where even scientific knowledge are governed by immutable laws and constants that they have nothing to do with reality, but limits the potential of inquiring minds. The economic program should not be elected in laws that are inflexible, but must respond in real time as the needs change or satisfied, so that any limited resources maximize to its full potential. We have a government claim to represent our shared interests, yet more often than not, it's the aspiration of the privileged few that wins the day. The people's abolition of paid legislation in favor of an open source legislator alone could save any country from corruption and the high expense of running that branch of government. Moreover, any direct participation of the people in the crafting of their own future will create more responsible, progressive thinking citizenry that's able to govern themselves. On the other hand, the capitalist monetary-based economic system just reached its new shameful milestone when Oxfam reported that only 26 billionaires own more than half of the world's population. And then you can see more of a statist, capitalist form, monetary form, central banking and all that good stuff, which is more a form of Hamiltonianism. And it says here, the world is yet to see a truly democratic system of government. However, the technology and infrastructure to make it happen already exists today, e.g. social media platforms and blockchain technology. It's time to realign our priorities and maximize the full potential of the technologies that are already in place, and realize that the very idea of government itself has been effectively rendered obsolete. It is grossly irresponsive, unreliable, inefficient, and always subject to the whims and emotions of a few individuals. Spontaneous order, that's how the natural system maintains its equilibrium of peace and harmony all throughout its existence. There you go. People down there should take that initiative. You got some intelligent people in that country. It's very beautiful, and it's just government. It's always going to be an issue. And don't get me wrong, sanctions, central banking, and poor managing is all, you put all that across the board. You can't just blame one particular area. But the ones who got shafted the most are the rank and file, the people themselves. And that's why I'm real critical about the Venezuelan government when they have all weapons of war or firearms is owned by the state. That's according to their own constitution, Article 324. Look it up. Very disturbing. So technically, or constitutionally, Venezuela is a police state, like it or not. However, the United States government should not entangle with should not get involved in foreign entanglements. Now I hear about this. Read about the 5,000 U.S. Army troops that are right along Colombia because Colombia is a good ally. That's what I say. Throw John Bolton's ass in the front line. Let's see how tough this guy is. I don't even know how many people like that. Think about it. Throw him in there. Marco Rubio, he supports invading Venezuela. Throw him on the front line. Don't worry. Don't bring your mirror there, glam boy. Tired of your garbage too. All these loudmouths in their little cubby holes, trying to tell people what they believe in. Give me a break. So that's how you gotta see it. Look at all sides. There's people are pro Maduro. I'm not pro anything. I just like to see principle over political theater. You know, the big fiasco, because a lot of good folks out there, they're hurting, but they say there's no torture. That's pretty irrelevant. A lot of it's all controlled. Remember, it's a socialist style government, but it doesn't mean they own everything. All right, there's a big difference. But the people in that country need to decide for themselves. And if they got the technology, they need to take the initiative on utilizing this. There was a good amount of them are down there. More of them should utilize and share information, and you can tell the government give a big middle finger. Yeah, we like it, but you need us more, we need you. All right, so we're going to do one more here, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, I'll do one more here. And this one's entitled Most People, and it's most people treat the Constitution like it's only a suggestion. This is by Mike Meharry, came out on the 29th. And by the way, we can wish Thomas Paine a happy birthday. He was born on January 29th, 1737. Alright, but it says here, the Constitution is just a series of suggestions, at least how most Americans treat it. A concept of a living, breathing Constitution is the biggest enduring myth in America's pop political narrative. I use it primarily a left-wing dogma, but in the era of Trump, an awful lot of people on the right have embraced the myth as well. A few weeks ago, I posted an article by Christiane Hall about illegitimacy presidential emergency powers, but I was told the constitutional argument wasn't really important. After all, we're faced with the crisis at the border, and it's imperative that the president deals with it. Surely, there's wiggle room in the Constitution for the president to act. We can't be dogmatic at times like this. The Constitution was meant to flex with the times. No, it wasn't. The powers delegated to the federal government and distributed among its three branches were set in stone. As I have explained before, a living, breathing Constitution is dead. But Mike, people said, you can't expect the government to be limited by a document written more than 200 years ago. It has to be able to flex to change with the times. And change with the times. Yes, I agree. And the wisdom, the founders included a process to change the Constitution as needed. It's called an amendment process. You will find it in Article 5. But Mike, but Mike, me a lot. It's hard to amend the Constitution as it takes too long. We need to be able to react quickly in an emergency. Why we can't be waiting around for amendments? The magic lamp theory. Bing! Yeah. Actually, that was the point. We don't want to give the government new powers every time there is some perceived crisis. Once the government has given the power, You'll never give it up. Not ever. The power you allow government to exercise today will remain with you forever. So darn well better slow your roll and the count cost. Expanding government power should only be done with deliberation by those with cool heads. It's not something that should be done in the middle of a crisis. If you want a perfect example of what happened when government is allowed to grow in the midst of a crisis, just look at all the garbage we got in the wake of 9/11. The Patriot Act, the TSA, the Department of Homeland Security, and a bunch of undeclared wars. That stuff is never going away, and sadly, in retrospect, those things did virtually nothing to make us safer. As James Madison wrote, I entirely concur in the propriety of resorting to the sense in which the Constitution was accepted and ratified by the nation. In that sense alone is a legitimate Constitution, and if not be the guide in expounding it, there can be no security for a consistent and stable, more than faithful exercise of its powers. We cannot have a consistent and stable government when a dominant party arbitrarily expands government power to address whatever necessity that it perceives. But sadly, that seems to be the kind of system most Americans want. They like the idea of a constitution in theory, but in practice, they don't want anything more than a suggestion. Well, I say I deprecate on those that have that mindset. There's no such thing as quick remedies, folks, when it comes to government. Everything happens in a period of time. Look what the shadow government and their tyrannical minions done. At least a good 130, 40 years. Think about that. But in due time. Vigilance is always the key. Never trust a politician. Government and lack me control the mind. You want to stop off stand up for the Constitution? You gotta start being the teacher, the rabbi, and share information with people. Don't listen to those clowns on TV. I can give you a whole bunch of names. If you get offended by it, fine. Like the Mark Levins, the Sean Hannitys, the Chris Matthews, the Rachel Maddow's. A lot of these news stations, media garbage, is nothing more than awful, stupid, lousy entertainment. Do your homework. Support people like Chris Hall, which Mike Meharry, 10th Amendment Center. That's another great organization. Look up stuff on the U.S. Constitution. And there's plenty of information out there, folks. You can share with everyone. Then you can make a difference. Share the power, knowledge of liberty, self-reliance. Not get a handout from the government. Or listen to the hype. Like we see right now, for example, these folks out there are trying to run for president. And they all have to go on a high horse. Yeah! I said no. A president's job is to be an elected ambassador. Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution tells you what their job is. Self-explanatory. The more you know, the more you implement it. I'll just rephrase that. The more you know your rights, the more you implement it, the less you fear. And that's what freedom's about. When the government fears its people, then that's freedom. No exceptions. And that is it. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, send me something that's interesting me I want to check out. Whatever you do, please feel free to share your correspondence with decorum. Plus, I will be sending you all my contacts, social media sites, and email addresses, and Patreon. If you're gonna be my patron, patreon.com/Loki with 3 eyes. I'll post that on my Facebook page as well. Alright, my friends, once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the mighty act of resistance helps for the soul, can liberty, humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.